My name's Janet. Life hasn't always been easy, but who hasn't had tough times, right? My dad was my everything after my mom passed away when I was little. It was just the two of us against the world. He always told me how important school was and worked so hard to save money for my college dreams. "You're going to make it, kiddo," he'd say with a smile, dropping coins into our beat-up college fund jar. I believed him, and I believed in us. After high school, I started at a local community college. I wanted to study investment management and make a name for myself. That's where I met Douglas. He was in my class, charming, with this messy, just got out of bed look that somehow really worked on me. We hit it off right away, stealing glances during class and laughing over bad cafeteria coffee. Then everything fell apart. My dad passed away out of the blue, no warning, just gone. Losing him shattered me, but it wasn't just the heartbreak. I found out the college fund wasn't enough to keep me in school. I barely got through my first year scraping by, but eventually I had to drop out. My dad left me the apartment, a small, old one-bedroom in a rundown part of town. It wasn't much, but it was home. One chilly evening, Douglas came over. He walked in with his hands stuffed in his jeans pockets, looking around the apartment. "You live here alone, Janet?" he asked, noticing the peeling wallpaper. "Yeah, just me now," I said, trying to smooth down a loose piece of wallpaper. "It's not much, but it's home." He watched me for a second, then stepped closer and took my hands. "Let's get married, Janet," he said. "I want to take care of you." "Let's start our life here," Douglas said. It was sudden, sure, but nothing in my life had ever gone as planned, so why start now? "Okay, Douglas," I said, and it felt right. We didn't wait long. The wedding was as simple as it gets. Just us, a couple of friends as witnesses, and a quick ceremony at City Hall. Douglas's parents didn't come. They'd never really liked me. "Too plain," they'd whispered, thinking I couldn't hear. "Not one of us." It stung, but Douglas just squeezed my hand and whispered, "I love you. That's all that matters." After the ceremony, we walked back to the apartment, my apartment, now ours. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the sidewalk. Douglas opened a cheap bottle of champagne from the corner store and poured it into two mismatched glasses. "To us," he said, raising his glass. "To us," I said back, taking a sip. The champagne fizzed on my tongue, tasting like hope and a fresh start. Douglas and I had a deal. He'd finish college while I worked to pay the bills, and when he graduated, it would be my turn to go back and chase the degree I had to leave behind. It sounded simple enough, right? At least, that's what I thought. I worked 2 jobs to make it happen. During the day, I was a cashier at the grocery store, scanning endless items and dealing with the occasional rude customer. At night, I put on a different apron to wait tables at a diner, serving greasy burgers and bad coffee to truckers and night owls. It was exhausting, but I kept going, holding on to the dream of walking back into college someday. Douglas, meanwhile, was supposed to be focused on his studies. And at first I thought he was. But his demands started to pile up. "Janet, what's for dinner? I'm tired of fast food. I need something real, like Mom used to make," he'd say the moment I came home, barely able to stand after my shift. Sometimes I couldn't hold back. "Maybe you should learn to cook for yourself, Douglas." "I'm not your mom," I'd snap, tossing my keys on the table. His face would darken, shutting down. It was the beginning of something I couldn't quite name yet. "I'm studying to make something of myself." "The least you could do is keep the house clean," Douglas would say. His words cut deep, but I kept quiet, afraid of breaking the fragile balance we had. Douglas's parents didn't help. They were educated and polished, so different from me with my high school diploma and grease-stained diner uniform. They barely acknowledged me, and when they did, it was to throw out a backhanded comment. "You'd understand this if you had finished school, dear," his mom would say, sipping tea and looking at me over her glasses. Douglas didn't stick up for me. He just nodded, agreeing with them like their words were gospel. He started spending more time at their house, avoiding our small apartment and the responsibilities waiting here. One night, as I stood in the bathroom scrubbing diner grease from under my nails, he hit me with another blow. "I'm staying at my parents' tonight." I need a quiet place to study and a good night's sleep. I slammed the cabinet shut harder than I meant to.
Fine.
Do what you want, I said, sharp and biting, full of everything I didn't say out loud. As time went on, I threw myself into work. My routines, bagging groceries, serving food, cleaning tables, became my escape. I was like a robot, just going through the motions. One night, after a long shift, I came home to an empty apartment. Douglas wasn't there. No explanation, just a note. Gone to study. Make sure dinner's ready tomorrow. I crumpled the note in my hand, the edges cutting into my skin. Alone in the quiet kitchen, I let it all hit me. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the anger I'd been holding back. A tear slipped down my cheek, even though I tried not to let it. After years of working 2 jobs while Douglas focused on school, the day finally came he graduated. He landed a job almost right away at a big, well-known company. His first paycheck felt like winning the lottery compared to the tips I made at the diner. It was like a breath of fresh air for both of us, a moment of hope in our strained lives. I remember sitting across from Douglas at our little kitchen table one evening. I felt a spark of hope as I spoke. With your new job, I was thinking, maybe it's time for me to cut back at work and start looking at programs. To go back to school and finish what I started, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Douglas didn't even look up from his plate. Janet, we can't afford that. Every penny counts, and you know how tight things are, he said. His fork clattered against the plate, the sharp sound cutting through the room like his words. I leaned back, my heart sinking, but I wasn't ready to give up yet. I could keep one job, just work day shifts and take night classes. We'd still have enough coming in, I suggested, trying to hold on to the dream. But he shook his head, his tone cold and final. Just forget about college, Janet. We need stability, not more debt. It's not practical. The conversation ended there, but the argument replayed in my mind for days. Before I could bring it up again, I found out I was pregnant. When our daughter Victoria was born, my dreams of college faded into the background. She became my priority. Raising Victoria was a joy, but it was also another chain tying me to routines I hadn't chosen. I kept working at the grocery store, my dreams set aside like the shelves I stocked. Douglas's criticisms didn't stop, though. They just shifted. You're not doing it right, Janet. She needs to learn proper manners, not whatever it is you're teaching her, he'd say, barely glancing up from his phone. I'd hold Victoria close, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here, I'd say, even as doubt crept in. As Victoria grew, Douglas's parents became more involved in her life. They paid for a fancy preschool and made sure every school event was about showing off their grandparent pride. Their influence slowly overshadowed mine. One evening, Douglas laid down a new rule without even flinching. Janet, it's best if you don't come to the school events. The teachers have certain expectations of families, and we can't ruin Victoria's opportunities. His words stung, but I swallowed my hurt. I wasn't just losing my dreams. I was losing my place in my daughter's life. Those words felt like a slap, hidden behind fake concern. So, what am I supposed to do? Just stay home and pretend I don't have a daughter? Pretend I don't see her growing up, learning things I'm not teaching her, becoming someone I barely know? I asked, my voice trembling. It's for the best, Douglas said coldly. His indifference was the final blow to the dreams we once shared. The years went on, and Douglas's words weighed heavy, not like a safe anchor, but like something dragging me down. His sharp commands to Victoria left scars, teaching her to disrespect and dismiss me. Janet, don't bother telling her what to do. She listens to me, not you, he snapped one evening when I suggested Victoria help set the table. It's for her own good, he added, dismissing me in front of Victoria. I saw my little girl's eyes harden, mirroring her father's. You don't know anything, Mom, she'd say when I asked her for help. Her tone matched Douglas's perfectly. Each word felt like a stab. I tried to reach out to Victoria to close the growing distance between us. I wanted mother-daughter talks, time to bond. But she only pulled further away, retreating into a world shaped by Douglas and his parents, a world I wasn't part of. One day, it all hit me in the worst way. Victoria had friends over, and their laughter echoed through the house. I was cleaning and bumped into them in the hallway. I smiled, wiping my hands on my apron, ready to say hello. But before I could, Victoria cut in. "Oh, that's just our housekeeper," she said. Her friends barely glanced at me, nodding as they shuffled past into her perfectly kept room. The door clicked shut, and their muffled giggles felt like knives in my chest. I stood there frozen, then retreated to the kitchen. Leaning against the fridge, I let the tears come, no matter how much I tried to hold them back. I wasn't her housekeeper. I was her mother. But in that moment, I felt like I didn't belong in my own home. That evening, I couldn't stay silent. I confronted Douglas, my voice shaking but determined. "How can you let her, our daughter, treat me like this?" Today, she called me the housekeeper, Douglas. In our home, he didn't even look up from his paper. "Maybe if you didn't look the part, she'd respect you more. You're always cleaning, always wearing those rags. What do you expect?" His words hit me hard, breaking through whatever strength I had left. "I'm trying, Douglas. I'm trying to make this a home, but you and your parents, you're teaching her to hate me," I said, my voice trembling. Douglas scoffed and folded his newspaper neatly. "Janet, you need to stop being so sensitive. She's growing up in a different world than you did. She needs to fit in," he said dismissively. At night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts spiraled. Douglas pulling away, his parents' cold remarks, and now Victoria's rejection. It all painted a clear picture. I was an outsider in my own life. My role was just to work, to provide, and to stay unnoticed. As Victoria grew into a teenager, her embarrassment of me became impossible to ignore. She made comments about my old clothes and simple manners, and they cut even deeper because they sounded just like Douglas's. She was ashamed of me, her mother, the one who had given up everything for her. When I turned 41, I hoped it might be a fresh start, a small step toward something better. I decided to celebrate, nothing fancy, just a quiet dinner with Douglas and Victoria. I booked a table at a nice restaurant downtown, imagining for once we might share a nice evening together as a family. When I got home from work that day, feeling a flicker of hope, the apartment was unusually quiet. Douglas and Victoria were sitting in the living room, staring at the TV with strange looks on their faces, like they were bracing for bad news. "Hey, I've got a surprise," I said, trying to sound cheerful despite how tired I was. I booked us a table at Marcello's for dinner to celebrate my birthday. Just the three of us. Douglas turned off the TV, raising an eyebrow. A small smirk tugged at his lips. "Janet, seriously? You think we want to go out and celebrate with you, a dropout? What would we even talk about?" His words hit hard, but before I could respond, Victoria joined in.
"Yeah, Mom.
"It's kind of embarrassing. You wouldn't even know which fork to use," she said, her tone dripping with the same disdain as her father's. I felt my face flush, their words stinging like a slap. The hope I had for even a small moment of connection shattered in an instant. "I just thought we could be a family for tonight," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Douglas laughed, a cold, mocking laugh. "A family? With you making a fool of yourself? No thanks." Then, with a smirk, he stood up, walked to his briefcase, and pulled out an envelope. He tossed it onto the coffee table like it was nothing. "Here's my gift to you," he said, his tone cruel. Confused, I picked it up, my hand shaking. It was a divorce application. This is your gift," I stammered.
"Yeah."
"Consider yourself free from us. We're done, Janet. I'm taking Victoria, and we're moving out. You can keep this place," he said coldly. Victoria just nodded, standing beside him. "I'd rather live with Dad. I can't be seen with you, Mom. It's just too embarrassing," she said, her words cutting deep. They packed up their things quickly, moving with a chilling efficiency. I stood frozen, watching as my world fell apart. Not just the physical pieces of our life, but every last bit of affection or connection we'd once shared. When they left, the door clicked shut, soft but final, echoing like a gunshot in the empty apartment. The divorce was fast, cold, and painful. In court, Douglas's parents testified against me, calling me uneducated and unfit to be a mother. They painted me as a failure in every possible way. Even Victoria spoke, her voice steady and rehearsed. "I want to live with my dad. He's better for me," she said, her words like a dagger. Sitting in that sterile courtroom, listening to all the ways I had supposedly failed, something inside me shifted. Maybe it broke, or maybe it finally came together. I realized then that they were strangers to me now. Their words couldn't wound me the way they once did. I was alone, truly alone. But maybe, just maybe, that was the freedom I needed. One thing became clear. I had to prove, if to no one else but myself, that I was capable of so much more. That burning resolve led me back to the doors of the college I had left years ago. I enrolled again. I was older than most of my classmates, but I came with a fire in me that only life's hardships can bring. I hired tutors, spent late nights wrestling with investment theories and financial models, my eyes burning from exhaustion, but my determination stronger than ever. Social media was a landmine. Every now and then, I'd see a picture of Douglas, Victoria, and his new partner, the woman who had replaced me. They looked so happy, carefree, living in a fancy downtown apartment that screamed luxury. It stung to see them thriving while I was still trying to piece myself back together. But instead of letting it drag me down, I used it as fuel. Each picture, each post, lit a fire in me to push harder, to fight for the life I deserved. I used my anger and pain to push myself forward. Instead of letting bitterness weigh me down, I turned it into my fuel. By the time graduation day came, I was a completely different person from the one who had started. "You've got what it takes, Janet. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise," my favorite professor, Dr. Zachary, said during our last meeting. His words were like a balm to my wounded pride. With his recommendation, I got a job at a respected finance firm. I stepped into the corporate world with a determination to succeed. It wasn't easy. The corporate world was like another battlefield, but I was ready for the challenge. I started at the bottom, just another employee, but not for long. In just 4 years, I worked my way up to become a department head. My name was on the door of my own office, and my decisions shaped the company's future. As my career grew, so did the rest of my life. I traded in my old, beat-up car for something sleek and new, a car that felt like a promise of what I could achieve. I moved out of my modest apartment and into a modern high-rise, with city views that sparkled like the stars I was reaching for. Shopping for clothes became more than just buying something nice. It became part of who I was. Each suit, each dress I chose, was like armor, projecting confidence and strength. My hair, once always tied back in a plain ponytail, was now styled in waves or pinned up in elegant designs that said I cared about the details. Even my friends noticed the change. "You're doing what you were meant to do, Janet. It's like you've finally found your stage," my friend Christina said one day over coffee, her eyes wide as she looked at me. "Yeah, I guess I have," I said, sipping my espresso. Douglas, Victoria, and all the pain they brought me became just a small part of my story, no longer the thing that defined me. One night, while browsing job listings, I stumbled on something that stopped me in my tracks. It was a department head position at none other than the company where my ex-husband, Douglas, worked. My heart raced. Half of me wanted to prove I could do it, the other half just loved the sheer audacity of applying. The interview was set for the next week. I walked into that office with all the confidence of a woman who had rebuilt herself from the ground up, with nothing to lose and everything to prove. The interviewers were a panel of 3, each one more impressed than the last as we talked about market trends and financial strategies. By the end of the meeting, I could see the excitement on their faces. "Well, Janet, I have to say, it's refreshing to see someone with such a clear vision and strong knowledge. We'd be lucky to have you on board," the senior interviewer said, smiling warmly. "Thank you. I'm ready to hit the ground running," I replied, my voice steady and my resolve stronger than ever. My first day felt like something out of a movie. As I was introduced to my new team, there was polite applause and welcoming smiles. But then I saw Douglas's face. The shock on his face was priceless, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open, like he'd seen a ghost. The head of the company, Mr. Jeremy, seemed to notice and looked amused. He put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Everyone, I expect you to give Janet all the support she needs. She comes highly recommended, and I believe she will take this department to new heights." As the room cleared, Douglas stormed up to Mr. Jeremy, his voice low but angry. "I applied for this position. Why did you give it to her? What does she have that I don't?" Mr. Jeremy looked at Douglas, then at me, raising an eyebrow. "Douglas, the decision was based purely on merit. Janet's qualifications and vision for the department far exceed what you've shown us so far. There's a lot you could learn from her." Douglas scoffed, his voice rising. "Learn from her? This has to be some kind of joke." "No joke, Douglas. I suggest you adjust your attitude and focus on your own responsibilities," Mr. Jeremy replied calmly. Humiliated, Douglas did something I didn't expect. He slammed his ID badge down on the table, muttered something about a stupid boss, and stormed out of the office. Mr. Jeremy sighed, shaking his head as he watched Douglas leave. "Sorry about that, Janet. I'll take care of it. Why don't you get started with your teams?" I nodded, a small, satisfied smile creeping onto my face as I watched Douglas stomp down the hallway. The sound of his angry footsteps was music to my ears. Later, I overheard Mr. Jeremy on the phone. Yes, he resigned. No, I can't give him a positive recommendation, not after this. The rest of the day flew by, filled with introductions and planning sessions. But through it all, one thought stayed with me. Justice, in its own way, had been served. Douglas had underestimated me, just like he always did. But this time, I proved him wrong. I had come out on top. After Douglas stormed out of the office that day, his life spiraled downhill faster than I ever imagined. I started hearing rumors from mutual acquaintances, people eager to share the gossip. They said Douglas's latest girlfriend had kicked him and Victoria out of her fancy apartment. Left with no other option, they moved back in with Douglas's parents. I couldn't help but think how far he had fallen. Around that time, Victoria, now a college student and just as demanding as Douglas had raised her to be, showed up at my door. She looked around, letting out a low whistle. "Wow, Mom, you really upgraded, huh? Guess dumping Dad worked out for you," she said lightly, but there was an edge to her tone that put me on guard. "Victoria, what brings you here?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. She walked in without waiting for an invitation and made herself comfortable on my sofa, like she owned the place. "Well, things are pretty tight at Grandpa's, and I thought, since you're rich and all now, maybe I could move in here. But I'd need a decent allowance, obviously," she said with a casual shrug. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw how much of Douglas's influence was still part of her. It hurt to see, but it also brought clarity. "Victoria, I think you should leave," I said firmly. "I'm not going to let you use me. Not you, not anyone." Her face crumpled, and she started crying, but her tears didn't affect me the way they used to. When she saw I wasn't moved, her temper flared. "You're just selfish. You've always been selfish," she shouted before storming out. Her parting words stung, but they didn't shake me. In the weeks that followed, I heard bits and pieces about their lives. Douglas had started drinking heavily, unable to handle his bruised ego. Victoria moved to another city, maybe searching for the independence she thought she wanted. As for me, life found a new rhythm, one of success and fresh starts. I met Logan, a colleague who was everything Douglas wasn't. He was kind, steady, and gentle. Over time, our friendship grew into love, and we got married in a small, joyful ceremony surrounded by people who truly cared for us. Looking back on everything, I realized how far I'd come. Losing my old family had been painful, but it helped me find myself. In doing so, I gained a life that was real and fulfilling. As I looked ahead, I felt ready for whatever came next, knowing I hadn't just survived. I had thrived. I had written my own story, one of strength, growth, and triumph.